The question I have for us this morning is, what do you look to? Because whatever you look to is what is within your sights. And whatever is in your sight is what you will focus on. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 to 18 puts this beautifully for us. It says, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporal, but what is unseen is eternal." How does that become a reality? And how do we keep that eternal focus of our lives as we go through life, which is constantly disrupted and challenged, and we are tempted to take our eyes off and focus on so many different things? And so, how do we live here on earth, not just connected to what God has for us up above in heaven? Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The question I have for us this morning is, what do you look to? Because whatever you look to is what is within your sights. And whatever is in your sight is what you will focus on. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 to 18 puts this beautifully for us. It says, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporal, but what is unseen is eternal." And I love this verse because it does not disregard the reality that we are human beings living not in an eternal realm, but in a temporal realm. So we fix our eyes in this temporal realm, not on what is seen, but the Bible encourages us to have our focus on things that are unseen. And that's the conundrum, that's the challenge, that's the difficulty, that's the tension, that's the conflict that we as believers have in walking faithfully with Jesus Christ. We get so sucked into this life here on earth that we lose sight and perspective of eternity. And what we don't understand is that what we do here on earth has an impact of our life in eternity, for eternity. And so how I spend my time, my finances, my stewardship of everything that God has given me, the Bible says we will be rewarded for what He will hold us accountable for. Salvation is what gets us into heaven. But once we are in heaven, there is a reward for our being good and faithful. And so, Ecclesiastes 3:11 states that God has set eternity, listen to this, in the human heart. So we are without excuse to say, "God, I never knew. God, I didn't understand. God, I didn't know what you were talking about." And more so for those of us as believers who have received the Spirit of God, who Pentecostal believers who have received the baptism of the Spirit of God. We're not even on the evangelical scale. Now we've moved beyond charismatic to Pentecostal, and we're tongue-talking, supposedly Bible-reading, understanding, revelational Rhema word people. We should be aware of the eternal and be aware of eternity that is so not removed from our lives, but here on earth. In England, we had a phrase, "Why wait till you get to heaven to have," can I remember that? "Don't have steak on a plate while you wait." I think I got that completely wrong. Okay, we'll edit that out. All right, don't worry. It's a lovely, I haven't used that English phrase for a long time. But basically saying, why wait till you get to heaven to have steak when you can have it here on earth? I forget how it's said, but it's a great way. So God has set eternity in the human heart. So within our very being. And the Hebrew word for eternity is olam. O-L-A-M. And it refers to God placing an eternal longing, a sense of eternity in the human heart. It's funny, when we're young, we really don't think about eternity. We think eternity, it's way, way, way away. But as you get older, you begin to think, gosh, I'm now 70, I'm 60, I'm 80. I'm on the other side of life. But that, I think, sometimes is too late for us to be thinking about that. We should be thinking about eternity from the time that we come into a relationship with Jesus Christ. We need to be so focused, and our sights need to be so focused on what is not seen, because ultimately that is where we will spend the rest of our lives. And so God is not asking us to disregard the reality of living every day, but He's saying, don't let every day become the focus for your tomorrow. Don't let the everyday become the focus for your tomorrow. Therefore He said, why worry? Do the birds worry? The lilies, do they are concerned? It's easier said than done. But He challenged us. And what was He doing there? He was setting eternity. He was calling upon that longing within our hearts of eternity and saying, guys, don't focus in on this. Look at how these birds are cared for. Would your Father not care for you so much more? Your eternal Father not want to fulfill every one of those needs in your heart? And Ecclesiastes 3:11, in stating that God has set eternity in our hearts, confirms to us as human beings who are created in God's image and likeness that we operate in a completely different way to every other form of life here on earth. We are not like the cats and the dogs and the birds and the bees. We are different. We are set apart. We have been created in His image. We carry the glory of God upon our lives. We are His creation, the handiwork of His creation. And so we have that sense of eternity in our lives. We possess an innate knowledge that there is something more to life than what we see and experience here and now. And it's that God-given awareness that there's something more, that life here is transient, that we're in a transient world. And we need to always be aware of that and keep that at the forefront of our focus, because if we don't, we'll be living for today with no mind for tomorrow. So what do you focus on is what you will have your sight on, and what you have your sight on is what will be your focus. First things first, what is focus? Focus, experts define focus as the act of concentrating your interest or activity on something. That's somewhat a boring definition, but there is an important insight inside this definition. It's defined as the act, so it's a willful act that you have of concentrating your interest and activity on something. Right now, I trust that all of you are focused.
On what you're saying.
And what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is about heavenly things, not just about myself. Tim Ferriss says, what you don't do, and I like this, determines what you can do. So in seeking to set the focus of our lives right, it's not about trying to find what we should do. The question is, what should we not be doing? Which is why Jesus said, don't worry. He was not saying to you, why worry? He said, don't worry. If you don't worry, then you can focus in on what He wants us to focus on. Focus can only occur when we have said yes to one option and not to all other options. Which is why I have one wife.
Yes, we say that.
Forsaking all others. That means there were others. Forsaking all others.
As long as we both shall live.
As long as we both shall live. Commitment. It's saying that my sights will not be focused on anybody else. And the moment I begin to wander, or any person wanders, they lose the intimacy, they lose the beauty of the relationship that they have in the present. And so listen to this, very interesting as we go on. Focus can only occur when we have said yes to one option and no to all other options. In other words, Elimination is a prerequisite for focus. So ask yourself, what are the things in my life that I need to be eliminating that hinder me from keeping my focus on eternity? What are the things I need to be removing? And of course, focus doesn't require a permanent no, but it does require, and I like this, a present no. That means it's an ongoing, progressive thing. Today, what I say no to is, and tomorrow what I need to be saying yes to is not something. And so we need to know that our focus doesn't require a permanent no. Obviously, there's a permanent no to sin. There's that black and white line that God draws. But in the priorities of everyday life, we need to be able to make those priorities, discern what is of eternal value and what God sees of value, and we say yes to those things. You always have the option to do something else later. But in the present moment, focus requires that you only do one thing. Focus is the key to productivity, because saying no to every other option unlocks your ability to accomplish the one thing that is left. You know, one of the joys of online communication is that we can connect with one another, but when people's screens are down, you don't know what they're doing behind that screen. Are they busy stirring their dal for lunch? Are they focusing on something else? Is their attention moved on to some other things? And it's easy for us to be distracted, and one of the things that the enemy does is he distracts us. One of the things he wants to do is to distract us, so much so that we are so busy that we lose sight of what is really important, and we begin to say yes to things that have no eternal consequence and no to those things that connect us with eternity. And so for us to live productive lives, to lives that are focused in on eternity, we've got to learn to say no to the right things and connect it with yes in the right way. Luke chapter 12 verses 1 to 12 tells us the story of a certain rich man who was a wealthy man who yielded an abundant harvest, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And the story goes on to tell us that, and I remember reading this beautiful story for the girls when they were kids. He built a bigger barn, and the barn was not big enough, so he built a bigger barn and a bigger barn and a bigger barn. And God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich towards God. Again, Jesus teaching us the importance. It's not wrong to enjoy the wealth of today. It is not wrong to store up, and it is wise to invest, but not with the focus of this world. Your investments of time, money, energy must be on eternal things. And so the challenge I have for each one of us in our lives is to assess our own lives and say, God, for me to understand what it means to stay focused on eternity, how should I be spending my time, my investments, my finances, my energy, my gifts, my talents? Because those things that I sow into eternity, I will reap a reward for eternity. But the gold that I store, the Bitcoin that everybody wants to buy now, it's not wrong to buy it. But if my focus is only that, then I'm missing out on eternity, because I cannot take that with me to eternity. I've buried enough people to know, not very much, but your mortal body is what fits in that coffin. And we know the pharaohs built amazing structures to take with them all their things to eternity. But when you dig into a pyramid, the gold and the wealth that they had is still here on earth. So we came into this world with nothing in our hands. We leave this world not with the wealth of this land. So You can claim to have eternity in your sights, but be blinded by the bling and the things of this world. And Matthew chapter 6:19 says, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroy them, and where thieves break in and steal. Clear. Priority. Don't store up. Doesn't mean to say it's not wrong to have, but don't store up. Because what will you do with it? So, treasure is anything we value above all else.
That's important.
And that which motivates us to action. For some it is money, for others it's power, for some it's relationships, it's attention, it's fame. Whatever motivates for a sense of well-being, whatever motivates you, whatever you value rather, is what your treasure is, and you are motivated in that direction. So that becomes your focus. So there's so many things in this world that vie for our control of our hearts, our attention. But in our relationship with Jesus, we need to determine where our treasure is. And in our relationship with God, we need to make sure that we are focused in on eternity. That our eyes are always focused in on Jesus, His priorities, and what He is calling us and asking us to do. Many of us may claim to look forward to heaven, but our hearts sometimes are really not in it. Our hearts are caught up in the cares of this world because that's where our treasure lies. I remember one day we were at a shopping, we stopped by a gas station quite late at night coming back from a meeting, and we parked our car alongside another gentleman, and he had a very nice car, very fancy car, a great sound system, and he had a beautiful 3-year-old daughter in the back of the car. And as we drove up and whilst we were getting out, I noticed him do something. He had parked his car ahead of us. He removed the dashboard of his music system, because you have those security ones where you can remove them. And then he got out of the car, he left his daughter in the car, locked the car, and went to the gas station. That immediately told me that this man prioritized and valued his sound system more than his daughter. Perhaps he never really saw that. Perhaps it really didn't, perhaps that was not his intention, I don't know. And I've seen that so often with so many people. Just watch what they do, because what they do will tell you what matters to them and what they value. Which is why Jesus said, look at the birds. And then he said, doesn't God take care of them? So if God cares for the birds, Jesus said, how much more will He care for you? Watch what God does, and you know how much He values you. Watch what you do, and you will know how much you value Jesus. I'm going to close with 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7 to 16. It says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side. We face challenges, paraphrasing it, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in your body. For we are alive. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake. referring to the persecution that they were receiving because they loved Jesus and stood up for him. They had that eternal focus so that his life may be revealed in our mortal bodies. So then death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. It is written, I believed, therefore I have spoken. Since we have the same spirit of faith, we also believe and therefore speak, because we know that the one who raised the Lord Jesus from the dead will also raise us with Jesus and present us with you to himself. All this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. Here's a word of encouragement. Therefore, don't lose heart. Don't give up. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. I have a little app that I use to measure my weight. And it gives me my body mass. It also tells me my bone mass and my muscle mass and my water, whatever, all the different aspects of my body. And I can see the slow decline of my body. It's not getting any stronger. There's no more muscle mass right now. The water is at a good place. It told me standard, The fat is beyond standard. I'm working on that. But my bone is just about right, But my muscle mass is not where it should be. It's below par. And I am only 50 something, but it says that my body's at the age of 61. So I am already living in my bodily sense as a 61-year-old ahead of time. And so we know that our bodies are wasting away. We know that, it's downhill for us, but that hope, that certainty, that joy, that expectation we have of the transient time here on earth is simply so we can make it into heaven for eternity. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. There's a contrast between what is happening in my body and what is happening to me in the spirit. What is happening in my body is here on earth. It is temporal. It will not be seen for very long. But what is not seen is what God is doing on the inside of me, in me, to do things through me. And as I prioritize my life, I am connecting with eternity in every decision that I make. How I spend my money, my time, my efforts, my energy, my priorities, the things that I value on this earth should be the things that are of value in eternity. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Verse 18, Paul says, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporal, but what is unseen is eternal. What is the focus of your sight? Because wherever the focus of your sight is where your treasure is. And where your treasure is where you are looking to. This morning, I want each of us, as we come to this time of communion, to ask ourselves honestly, God, I know I've got to live my life here on earth. I've got to enjoy my life here on earth, and by God, God wants us to. He wants us to have a great, exciting life here on earth. But that joy and excitement that He wants us, even through the hardships, and each of us have our own stories of extreme hardship and troubles that we all face, just knowing that God cares for us. And that when we have that eternal focus on our lives, we can connect with eternity and begin to experience eternity in our lives here, like perhaps we have never experienced before. I want you to really take a great assessment of your life, the things that you own, possess, your bank balance that you have, whatever God has entrusted to you, and say, God, how am I using this to influence eternity? How am I using this for the kingdom? Assess your own life and take an assessment, make an assessment of your own life, and accordingly live your life well. Amen. I know each one of us at Life have that focus to make Jesus the very center of our lives. And in doing that, what we're saying is, God, you have your way in us and amongst us. And let everything we do have that eternal focus.